a fundamental transition and happening around the world where people are moving out of treasuries. I think all that stuff is nonsense. I think that the whole woe is me generation.
I got to ask you, man. I mean, with both the consumer and the long end of the bond market flashing red, is this the system finally making kind of its breaking point here?
Yeah, Jeremy, I think that you and I'm sure a lot of your viewers have been watching these trends for a very long time. There is a fundamental transition and happening around the world where people are moving out of treasuries into gold, into Bitcoin, into other assets that are a better store of value. So, I mean, the latest thing is the stablecoin idea. And if you think about it, if there was a way to instantly move all of your money around the world where you would also get a fair rate of interest, every bank in America would shut its doors the next day. So people are slowly escaping the system, and people are very aware that the system is permanently broken.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the root cause, too. I mean, I read that recent letter that caught kind of a lot of attention. I mean, in your newsletter, you called Cracker Barrel's decline to diagnose what you called, quote, socialism in the boardroom. So for our audience, I mean, let's explain the idea here.
Well, I think when you saw all of the media and the attention that went along with the BLM riots in 2020, all of that, I think, was just a front that allowed activists to really go further in gaining control of America's capital by gaining control of the boardrooms. And if you look, just Cracker Barrel is a great example. They replaced 9 out of their 10 board members. The only board member who wasn't replaced was the chairman of the company. They replaced their entire board following the BLM episode in 2020. And they, of course, they adopted all of the activist stuff. So the first new board member they brought in was the former head of diversity for Disney World. And, all he is a race grifter. And everybody they picked thereafter was either a minority or a woman. And they were all, of course, liberal. And they all had this view that Cracker Barrel as a brand and as a product is obsolete because it's fundamentally racist. And, that's just completely ridiculous. Everybody likes a good chicken and waffle, whatever color they are. And, most of these restaurants are along major highways. So they're getting plenty of minorities into their doors every day, truck drivers, people working. This is a working class restaurant. Why on earth these people like Bud Light, another example, think that they should espouse a political ideology that is hateful to their core customer is bonkers. But the bigger issue is, how are we going to run our economy? Should corporations be run by their owners, by their shareholders, or should corporations be run by political activists? And of course, you know how we both feel about that answer to that question.
Yeah.
But as you see more and more of this in America in different areas, like my kid's private school here in Baltimore County was teaching the wheel of privilege and explaining that white people are inherently evil. I mean, this stuff appeared all around our society at the same time. And it isn't just a theory of race. It's really a theory of who gets what, where, when, and how. And they have a socialist view about that. And that's been very harmful to many public companies and many institutions in our country.
I saw this email. Peter Thiel was writing Mark Zuckerberg, and he was talking about young people. He said that they're kind of burdened with student debt and locked out of housing, and that he feels that they have no, stake in the system, and because of that, they're going to turn against it. Is the corporate ideology you're describing simply the predictable result of maybe this broken economic promise?
I think all that stuff is nonsense. I think that the whole woe is me generation. I mean, they're the biggest bunch of pussies I've ever seen in my life. Look what happened to, my grandparents, right? They had to survive the Great Depression and then go fight World War II. Did you hear them complaining? or how about the people, how about my parents who survived the inflation of the 1970s? And, there was more M2 inflation in the 25 years before 2000 than there has been in the 25 years post 2000. I'm not saying that the inflation is good for anybody. I'd much rather it not exist. But it has been worse many times in our country's history. Yeah. And think about this for a second. If all you had done is just save $100 a week in Bitcoin and in gold for the last 25 years, you could buy any house in the whole country.
I mean, I wonder, some of them say it's about national security, but is it almost government just creeping deeper into corporate America?
All those things are true, but the thing that I hope people remember is we are a nation of laws, and we have a constitution that is designed to protect us from an overreaching government. And by the way, just because you might happen to like the guy who's overreaching today does not mean you're going to like the guy who's in the office next time who takes those powers even further. We have got to, as a country, we have got to get government back in its corner so that the private market can create more wealth. Otherwise, we're in a whole world of trouble. We've got $100 trillion coming due in Social Security obligations over the next 15 or 20 years, and we have absolutely no way to pay those debts. So either the Treasury will default or Social Security is going to default. Which one would you pick?
What's your biggest concern on the Social Security front? I mean, I saw a little bit on your thesis, but break it down to the audience on that front.
Well, I don't think the audience wants to hear this, but
I know
there is no such thing as the Social Security Trust Fund. None of that money was ever invested. It's just a tax. And the government lied to everybody saying that it was going to be invested. It wasn't invested. There is no money there. It's always been in the general fund. And so going forward, the receipts of the system will not be able to match the output of the system. Like any other Ponzi scheme, it's going to fail. And by the way, it's not going to fail in 20 years. It's not going to fail in 15 years. It's not going to fail in 10 years. It's going to fail in 4 to 6 years.
Wow.
This will become the most urgent and important political issue in the country by the end of this decade. That will happen. It's just math.
So, I mean, millions of Americans obviously have paid into Social Security their whole lives. Are you saying that the government has already spent the money?
That's a lie. They haven't paid into Social Security. There is no such thing. They've paid into the general fund of the federal government, who has spent all that money and more. Yeah. And there is no asset there. It's like it'd be the same thing if for the last 50 years you were running up a credit card. You bought your own credit card receivables and called them assets. There's nothing there.
Yeah. So what happens when they can't make good on that promise?
Well, my prediction is that we'll see a real civil war. I think you're going to see a situation where people finally realize that the government has been lying to them for decades, and they're going to go bananas. I mean, you think that our politics are fireworks right now. You haven't seen anything yet.
So, obviously, if inflation stays elevated, you're saying that's just going to accelerate this whole trust funds insolvency.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have taken refuge, or they feel okay about our fiscal problem because they figure we can always just print money to pay our bills. But they don't understand that the automatic Social Security increase, it's called the COLA, the cost of living adjustment every year, is mandated, it's law, and it happens automatically. And so if we go ahead and print another 10% of our economy to pay our bills this year, it's going to take that $100 trillion that we owe Social Security, and it's going to increase it by 10%. Now, that won't happen overnight, but it will certainly happen over the next 2 to 3 years. Those COLA increases are going to really become completely and absolutely unaffordable. And I just can't even imagine what the fiscal situation in the United States is going to look like by the time Trump leaves office. People who think that raising $500 billion or something like that in tariffs are going to balance our books are out of their minds. You know, we will have a fiscal deficit this year of very close to $2 trillion. And we're already $37 trillion in debt. None of this math makes any sense.
Stock market, I mean, it's taken a little bit of a breath today, but let's get back to, I mean, if gold is replacing treasuries as the world's premier safe haven, doesn't that upend the entire pricing model for risk assets? I mean, if the so-called risk-free asset is no longer risk-free, how does anyone know what stocks, property, or even currencies are really worth?
Well, look at any inflation in history. You know, what happens at the beginning is that the easy money leads to much higher multiples for financial assets. But eventually, the inflation actually harms the underlying economy to the point where it becomes very inefficient, and that's when the value of the businesses and the stock markets collapse. So I think if you look and you do a lot of work in history, there's a couple of good books about these kinds of crises. But basically, most economies can handle an inflation rate of between 4 and 6% without really causing big problems to the underlying economy. But I think if we get over those levels, I think that you'll see just a massive adjustment in the price of risk assets, just really massive. We have seen this before in our country's history. We saw this during the Great Depression. We saw this during the 1970s. If you see it run on treasuries, if the 10-year goes up to 7 or 8%, I mean, the stock market's going to trade at 7 or 8 times earnings. That implies a 75% correction. Now, listen, I'm not Nostradamus. I can't tell you when that will happen, but I can tell you that it will happen. Yeah. There is no way for us to escape the real world consequences of our government's bankruptcy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had to ask you about NVIDIA. Obviously, it's making headlines. They posted their record Q2 numbers, up 56% year over year, $46.7 billion in revenue. I mean, EPS beat and a massive buyback, but still dropped post-close. And I'm looking at it now, still down almost 2%. I mean, is the AI boom kind of losing its shine, especially with that data center miss and maybe China limbo? What are your thoughts?
No, I think we're still very much in the early stages of the AI boom. I'm sure there's going to be lots of peaks and valleys, but I have written since 2017 that NVIDIA is a must-own, and I would love to buy more of it. You got a chance earlier this year. I think the multiple got below 30 at one point. I would love to buy more NVIDIA, but I can't buy it at 50 times earnings, or I'm not sure exactly what the multiple is today, but I think it's considerably out of my price range right now. But think about this for a second. In the original internet boom, there were 3 companies that you sort of had to own if you wanted to capture that trend. And that was, of course, Intel, Microsoft, and Cisco. And Intel made the chips, Microsoft made the software, and Cisco made the networking gear. If you look at NVIDIA, they own all 3 of those components of this next wave of technology. They build the best chips. They have the best software architecture, and they have the best high-end communications gear for building all of these new data centers. So it is absolutely dominant in this next phase of technology. We've gone from serial computing, and now we are entering the parallel processing computing age. And NVIDIA has been very smart and is well ahead of their competition and leads in all 3 components of that tech trend. So I definitely would recommend buying some NVIDIA, and I would look to do so, like I said, if it drops below about 30 times earnings.
Okay. I got to ask you about real estate. Obviously, another battleground. Mortgage rates remain high. Commercial vacancies are really stubborn, but farmland values keep rising. I mean, how do you view residential versus commercial? And is farmland now the ultimate hard asset?
Well, I think that timber and farmland have sort of always been a very important hard asset, especially for wealthy families. A lot of very wealthy families have safeguarded wealth in timber for years. And one thing I like to explain about the timber business to people is, if you don't sell it, it doesn't mean it doesn't stop growing. So you can if you have a good timber asset, you can selectively choose when you harvest according to price, which is something that you can't do if you're a corn farmer. Yeah. So I do tend to advise people to lean more into the timber asset if they're looking for asset protection as opposed to farmland. But that's just me. The other interesting thing I always thought was so cool about timber is, if you want to know where the whole 2% interest rate thing comes from, it's because that's the growth that most hardwood forests grow at.
Before I let you go, I got to ask you about strategic materials too. I mean, we got these new additions. We're talking copper, maybe silver being added to that strategic list. We're talking uranium, copper. I mean, these are critical for energy and technology supply chains. But where do you see the most compelling opportunity right now when you look at those strategics?
That is a great question, and I have to plead ignorance. I have not yet made a real thorough study of all those that metal complex. I'm old school. I figure if you can learn to buy copper at the right time, you'll probably do pretty well.